Hello everybody, I'm Justin,
and
we are Fantasy Football in the Zone. So now that Week 15 is officially here, let's start off with the Thursday night game. The San Diego Chargers pulled a major upset against the Denver Broncos with the final score of 27-20. The guy I want to talk about is Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen has been one of the best waiver wire pickups of the season. Of course, you have Josh Gordon and Alshon Jeffrey, but Keenan Allen had 2 touchdowns in the first half, and this guy's been great for the last few weeks. And where do you rank him on your board for the next season?
I think he's a low-end 1 for next year, high-end 2.
What round?
In my round, I think the highest he probably goes is the 3rd. I think he's more of a 4th, 5th rounder.
Okay, now let's start with our start-sits. Let's start over the quarterbacks. Okay, go ahead.
My star quarterbacks this week are Matt Ryan and Ryan Tannehill. Matt Ryan has a great matchup with the Redskins. Excuse me. And Tannehill's been very hot, and I expect him to throw the ball a lot going up against the Pats in garbage time.
2 guys I like this week is Andrew Luck and Tony Romo. 2 guys you drafted as a quarterback 1 and haven't been performing as much as of late. And I think they both have bounced back this week, and I think they both have phenomenal days. Andrew Luck, you saw his comeback when he versed them last time, when he versed Houston this season. And Tony Romo, I think he'll light up Green Bay, because Green Bay defensively hasn't been able to stop anybody.
Let's move on to the sit-em QBs. My sit-em QBs this week are Eli Manning and Big Ben. These are 2 guys that are probably your 2. You can't trust either of them, really. And Eli Manning has a tough matchup going up against Seattle. Stay away from these 2.
2 guys I don't like this week is Jay Cutler versus Cleveland and Ryan Fitzpatrick versus Arizona. Jay Cutler, don't expect him to have a big week like Josh McCown's been doing. Josh McCown, he's been in the Chicago Bears system. He's been playing for like 5 weeks straight, and Jay Cutler, he's coming off an injury, and he's going to come off cold because he hasn't been playing lately, and he's going up against a tough matchup, his first game back, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is playing up against a tough Arizona defense, and I don't think you could trust him.
Yes. Let's move on to the start on running backs. My start running backs this week are Alfred Morris and Fred Jackson. They've both been pretty good running back 2s, and I think they both have great matchup. Expect big numbers from the 2 of them.
2 running backs I like this week is DeMarco Murray versus Green Bay. I know I said I like DeMarco Murray a couple weeks in a row now, but he's been so good lately, and I think he's a solid running back 2 for you. And Green Bay, like I said, they can't stop anybody. And Steven Jackson, another guy I said for the last few weeks, I like him. He's been another guy who's been playing really good as of late, and he's got a great matchup versus Washington. Now let's move on to the sit running backs. I don't like Ray Rice versus Detroit and Rashad Jennings versus Kansas City. I don't like Ray Rice versus Detroit because when you drafted Ray Rice, you probably expected him to be your number 1 running back, and he has not been performing like that. He's going up against a tough defense, against the Detroit Lions, and their front 4 is so good with Ndamukong Suh, Nick Fairley. I just don't like the matchup, and Rashad Jennings is another guy coming off an injury, and he's versing Kansas City, who I think could have bounced back this week as defensive.
My sit-em running backs are Bobby Rainey and Donald Brown. They both have touch matchups, and they haven't been the greatest. Let's move on to the start wide receivers.
I like Alshon Jeffrey versus Cleveland. When you think Cleveland, you think Joe Hayden, but Joe Hayden's probably going to go up against Brandon Marshall. And don't think now that Josh McCown's not the starter anymore, he doesn't have value. Because with Jay Cutler as quarterback, he liked him as well. And in the Yahoo PPR scoring, he had a 40-point day with Jay Cutler more than once.
Let's move on.
And I didn't say my second wide receiver. I also like Torrey Smith versus Detroit because when you play Detroit, you have to score points.
My start wide receiver this week is Pierre Garçon and Steve Smith. They both have great matchups with the Jets and the Falcons, and I think both of these guys can be mid-range wide receiver 2.
2 wide receivers I don't like this week is Mike Wallace going up against New England. He's a guy you really can't trust. He's been too inconsistent. And Kendall Wright versus Arizona. Kendall Wright, you probably can't sit this guy because, especially in PPR leagues, you probably got to start him. But lower your expectations because Patrick Peterson's been very good this season.
My wide receivers are Victor Cruz and Michael Crabtree. Michael Crabtree has a bad matchup. Don't expect much from him. And I don't like Victor Cruz. He's been one of the biggest disappointments in fantasy this year. And he has a bad matchup with Seattle.
Now let's go to the star tight ends. I like Dennis Pitta a lot this week. He has a tough matchup, but unless you have an elite tight end like Jimmy Graham or somebody, or if you had Rob Gronkowski, I said to pick him up on your start sits. I like Dennis Pitta this week because even Joe Flacco said it. Joe Flacco loves this guy, and he's a security blanket, and he sees a lot of targets, and I like him a lot. And I like Jordan Cameron versus Chicago. Jordan Cameron had an excellent week last week, and Jordan Cameron's also going up against Chicago, and Chicago, their linebackers haven't been good since they lost Brian Urlacher and Lance Briggs due to an injury.
My star tight ends this week are Delaney Walker, who's going up against the Cardinals, and the Cardinals been awful this season against tight ends. And I also like Colby Fleener this week. Let's move on to the sit tight ends.
My two sit tight ends this week is Heath Miller versus Cincinnati. When we were very high on Heath Miller when he was coming off his injury, we said to pick him up, but he really has been so inconsistent, and you can't trust him against a tough Cincinnati defense against tight ends. And Jared Cook, another guy who has a tough matchup and has been so inconsistent. And in playoffs, you can't have inconsistent. You have to have safe studs.
My sit tight ends this week are Greg Olsen and Logan Paulson. Logan Paulson you can't trust, and Greg Olsen has a tough matchup with the Jets.
Now let's move on to the sleeper defense. My sleeper defense is New Orleans. New Orleans is going up against Rams and Kellen Clemens, and New Orleans has been very good against quarterbacks. You've seen what they did to Cam Newton, Tony Romo, and Kellen Clemens, no offense, isn't one of these guys, and I expect New Orleans to get a few turnovers in this game.
My sleeper defense this week is the Redskins. They have a great matchup with the Falcons, and if you don't have a good defense out there, I suggest you go and pick them up. The Falcons been a bad offensive team, and I think they'll get a couple of turnovers.
Now we're going to say a sleeper, not just a defense, and one sleeper. I like Kirk Cousins this week. I don't think you could start him as a quarterback one, but I think if you're in a 2-quarterback league, I think he could be a great play because he has experience in this offense. He's come in the game a few times because RG3 gets hurt a lot, and I think he could be a good quarterback too. And we also seen what quarterbacks who came in right away, what they've done this season, just like Josh McCown.
I'm going to give you one sleeper.
And Nick Foles.
A tight end sleeper, Dennis Pitta. He's been great in his first game come back, and I expect big numbers against the Lions. And another sleeper is Jordan Todman for Jacksonville. You could start him this week against the Bills as a flex option.
And if you need another tight end for a big sleeper, since Rob Gronkowski's not playing, I think you could pick up the new tight end. The tight end for the Patriots. I really can't pronounce his name, but it's like Agwanai, like Humanai or something like that. I can't pronounce his game. You're going to have to check. Sorry about that. But let's follow us on Twitter and ask us some questions, and it will be answered.
Follow
Thanks for
us
watching.
on Twitter at FfInTheZone.